Welcome to the Counter Narrative Podcast, a show designed to change the way we talk and think about education. I'm Charles Williams, and together we'll explore untold stories, bold ideas, and innovative approaches that transform our schools and communities. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Counter Narrative Podcast. As always, thank you so much for being in this space. Always enjoying for either you to come back because this is something that you enjoy watching and listening to, or if this is your first time coming through, just welcome to this space. Hopefully you'll like what you hear and you'll stick around to check out one of the other 200 plus episodes. That is incredible for me to say out loud. So listen, I am excited to have a conversation with my next guest, and we're falling in an interesting space. We're recording before we actually get to meet one another. So by the time this episode is going to drop, we'll have actually connected and met in real time. So I cannot wait for that to occur just momentarily here, just within about another week or so. So we have this phenomenal educator. We had some technical issues, but we pushed through, we persevered, we were resilient. And so now we are in this space. So Mark Gibson, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, I appreciate you sticking around. I mean, I know many people would have just been like, listen, with all these issues, like, listen, I'll see you in about a week and a half. Like, we'll just talk then. But here we are. We're having this conversation. So, Mark, before we jump into the episode, tell us, who's Mark Gibson? Let us know a little bit about who you are as an educator, maybe how you got to this point.
So my name is Mark Gibson Jr. This is my 11th year in education. And how the story starts, man, is that an educator, like most of us, influenced me. As actually a coach, but I consider everyone in a lot of spaces educators, anyone that's passing down knowledge. But a coach came to my mom's house, recruited me at about 8th grade, 9th grade to come play on the other side of the tracks at a different school. And he drove me to school every single day. And even when I played other sports, I was recruited for basketball, but when I played track or played football, he still drove me home every single day. And that commitment, the response to that commitment for me was gratitude. And that was, I really did say I have to give back to a younger version of me because he really did save my life. He helped me get out of generational habits that didn't bring fruit or bring life. So it was my promise to myself that I had to go save other 11, 12-year-old versions of Mark Gibson Jr. And so this is my 11th year in it, still just as excited as ever, still just as passionate as ever, working with younger boys now, mentoring younger boys to hopefully expose them to different things that they'll need, different tools they'll need to get to where they want to go. And I'm here for the work, sleeves rolled up, ready to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you're telling me that this coach drove you to and from home every single day. Was that all 4 years?
All 4 years. I didn't get to drive or have a cell phone until my senior year. And it was like on my way to college. But yeah, he did it every single day. He did more than that, honestly, but he did that every single day. There was moments where I was late, couldn't wake up, and 5-10 minutes after the alarm goes off, I'd walk outside and he'd still be there, still sit in the driveway, ready to take me to practice or ready to take me to school.
That is wonderful. I mean, the commitment and dedication. And so I think a lot of times, even in this space, we hear about people who will say something, right? It's like, all right, maybe it's good for a day or a week, maybe a month, but for 4 years, that is incredible. So kudos, shout out to this coach that not only made a significant impact in your life, but was steadfast in those actions, which I think is a huge testament. So shout out to this coach. I'm curious. Also, kudos to you. You said 11 years in. Oftentimes in the field of education, we talk about the fact like we celebrate 5 years, which I think sometimes is really messed up. Like that's a really, really low bar. But kudos to you. for sticking around for 11 years and still in the classroom. I know many people would have jumped ship or moved to the dark side like I did. So, you know, great job. Still rolling up the sleeves, still doing the work. So I'm curious as we're talking about this. I know you mentioned, you know, how you're mentoring these young men, how you feel compelled to give back. So I'm curious what it is that you want to talk about this evening. What's sitting on your heart? What's sitting on your mind?
The biggest thing, again, it goes back to my story, is just building resiliency in these kids. A lot of these kids come from adverse childhood experiences, they come from different backgrounds. And so, my goal, I know for me, again, I'm saving 11-year-old Mark Gibson, but for me, I just needed exposure. That's all I needed, was to see a different way of life. And by seeing it, I could pursue it.
Hmm.
And so, a lot of what we try to do is build that resiliency. We try, and we do that through really three things: building trust and through relationships, providing a predictable and safe environment. Through that, we also really focused on our thoughts and our behavior. We talk a lot about influence shapes thinking, thinking shapes beliefs, and we act out of what we believe. And so, if we can focus more on our behavior or actions and our thoughts, our feelings will catch up. That's a lot of the middle work that we do. And then the last is actually advocating for teacher or educator wellness, because, like we talked about earlier, the grit it takes to do that for 4 years, you have to balance. I just heard this at the NYAR conference in Savannah, Georgia. One of the honorary speakers said she balances two C's in her life: commitment and convenience. And so it immediately made me think about my coach. For 4 years, where was that line for him in commitment and convenience, as he didn't give up on me and as he came back every single day? And so um, that those three things are really how we try to get advocacy and agency within our students and help move them and kind of be those first generation success stories that we hear. And a lot of it's just exposure. So exposure and really focusing, I say, upstream on influence to thinking. A lot of times we can be reactive to the behaviors, and all of our interventions are responsive and downstream, but trying to get upstream is like, no, we want to control the influence. And sometimes we can't compete with what they see every day, but that's what we want to at least try to do, is control the influence, get their thinking and thoughts to shape after that, get the rumination of those thoughts constantly. We talk about the discipline of just having to speak to yourself in a certain type of way every single day, and then your feet, your heart, your words, they will follow.
Mark, I love this topic mostly because I think I've shared with you in the past, you know, that I have a workshop that I do, a resiliency workshop, and it has the same kind of concept about being proactive, right? And many of these same elements that you're talking about are there, right? This idea of changing the attitudes, changing the way we at least do, and letting things catch up. You know, I love this phrase that I'm hearing resonate with you, like students cannot be that which they do not see, right? And so creating these spaces. So I'm curious, like the concept of resiliency, the topic of resiliency isn't new. We talk about it all the time in education, and yet it sounds like you're saying, hey, educators, we're doing it wrong. We're being reactive. We're not being proactive. We're addressing kind of the residual behaviors. We're not addressing the roots, right? We're in this kind of reactive space. And so I'm curious, like, why do you think that is? Why do you think in the work that we do, most of what we label as resilience are these kind of post actions, you know, reactive
Yeah.
responses to situations?
Well, there's layers. There's layers to that question and to the response. I could tie in a couple factors as different generations. We have different generations teaching how we grew up. We usually teach the way we grew up, so there's some cultural differences, and so a lot of what we grew up was punitive. It was very much do what I say, or you were just groomed to be respectful instantly. There's no other option. So now that kids are very interest based, not so much intrinsically motive. Like there's a couple things that just make, and we coddle a little bit. Like there's a book on how we're coddling our nation a little bit. We don't allow them to face adversity. So multiple factors, I think, in why we can kind of sometimes look at the children and say they're not resilient, but it's still our job, no matter where the kid or where they come to us, what they come to us with. It's still our job to help foster resiliency. And a lot of that means that we have to come down from our pedestal, from our totem pole, and meet them where they're at, wherever that's at. And we have to slowly start chipping away at it and showing them what resiliency looks like. Again, it goes back to the influence. Even if the home does not allow them to um, I say tackle adversity. Like we're going to approach it head on. If they don't allow them to do that, we're trying to spend our 7 hours each day influencing that thinking and letting them feel. You know, we always use the Maya Angelou quote of how people make you feel. Well, sometimes when you get the result of your hard work, how that makes you feel, that can be an extreme motivator as well. So it's trying to teach that and be creative about how we teach that to our children. And it's not as hard as I think we talk about it. It's really more of the humility it takes to meet kids where they're at.
You know, as you're saying this, it makes me think about this idea of Hotep Benzo, a great speaker out there from Hustle University. He has this phrase that says accountability is love, right? And I love that phrase because I think so oftentimes when we try to hold students accountable, right? And you mentioned this, whether it's generational, right, whatever it might be, we have students, sometimes we have parents, sometimes we have even our colleagues and our peers saying, wait a minute, why don't you give them a little grace? Why aren't you a little
Mhm.
patient? And you're like, I'm not, I am. I'm showing grace, I'm being patient, but I'm also trying to hold the student accountable because, as you pointed out, if I'm going to be resilient, right? If I'm truly going to be able to build up the tools, the skills, the experience necessary to be able to push through, then I have to be able to face adversity. And I'm not
Yeah.
just going to throw you out there, but I do need to hold you accountable. Like, man, yeah, you know what? You messed up today, right?
Yep.
Like, now we got to deal with it. Like, so I'm curious, how have you seen that playing out as you've been making the shift, as you've been doing this? And maybe it's some of the work that you're doing with these young men that you talked about. So feel free to talk a little bit about that program, but I'm curious, like, what has been your experience as you've moved into this more, I guess, this accountability is love space, like holding students accountable, letting them feel the challenges, and so that way they could actually build their own resiliency.
So it's funny. I I think I was taught restorative practice and all these resiliency things long before I knew what the word meant. Just growing up in my own, in my mom's house, you know, single mom of 5 kids, she used to always say, if I can get you to 18 and you can cook your own meals, you can provide for yourself, like you can stand on your own 2 feet, I have like good job, like good job to me, kudos to me. And that stuck with me as a parent, but also as a teacher that ultimately crutches are temporary.
Mm,
And so even if I have to provide crutches for a student, the goal is for you to walk by yourself. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the sympathy or the pity of it that we keep kids on crutches. So the most loving thing you can do is self sufficiency for them to be self motivated, self dedicated. Um, they can be they can self monitor their emotions, like self regulate his self. And sometimes we don't want to pass that off to them in education. We want to hold it and we want to be the teachers or the givers of it. But I only want to teach for a small time. I always used to tell my students, I know I'm a great teacher when you don't need me.
mm,
But when I realize you don't need me, I want to give you something else that you need me for. So it's that constant, I'm growing, pouring into you. But some of the uh, practical ways that we do this, especially in my classroom, again, with my kids and also with my Prime Academy boys, that the acronym stands for Preparing Individuals with Mindsets for Excellence. And so we call it the Prime Academy. And so, of course, the beginning of that is the relationships. And I kind of break this down and tell teachers it's like the 3 A's. Notice their appearance. You can go a long way with noticing a haircut, new clothes, shoes. Notice their actions and be insanely observant about the small wins, insanely observant. And going along with that, praise the accolades. Any small thing, I don't care if they won a championship on the weekend, praise them. If you can do that, you're fostering relationships. Like probably the next layer to that is you have to, this is hard, man. This is where humility comes in. You have to go overtime to allow a redeeming way out for kids, which means that instead of looking for defiance, instead of looking for the label to their action, you have to really work overtime to inquire about home and life and is it a bad day? And even if they give you an excuse that you know is avoiding accountability, you work from that. Okay, I'm here. I'm giving you this redeeming way out for today. But from today, we start accountability. And just allowing that redeeming way, not like they're getting over on you, just allowing them to have someone that wasn't just like liar, manipulator. It builds trust. It fosters relationships. So that's the first one. The second one is predictability. So that's in the structure piece. And so that's structure in our thoughts, structure in how we spend our time manage, a lot of those executive functioning skills. And one thing we do at Prime is it's from the 5 Minute Journal from Tim Ferriss created, and it talks about the first three things are gratitude. They come from so many situations. We're going to find three things to be thankful for right away. I promise you, you have it. So it's putting them in that space. Three things that will make today great. Put them down there. You're setting intention for the day. You're setting goals for the day. An affirmation. And I always tell them, say something about yourself you want to be true. It maybe is not true yet. And we follow up with that with action steps to hopefully make that be true. So if they say, I just had some put, I want to be an NBA player, they put all types of crazy stuff on there. Instead of being like, that's not realistic, I said, what are you going to do this week to work towards that goal? 50 shots, 100 shots, I don't care. But it's getting them in that routine of it. And then the last one is, what did I learn today? So trying to move them towards being reflective. And also, what were the highlights of today? What was the good about today? And that just is trying to influence positive thinking away from the negative thinking, away from maybe reality a little bit. And again, if behavior and thoughts drive feelings, I want you to start thinking this way. Because once you think this way and your behavior matches, then your feelings, even about your situation, will hopefully follow. And then the last is more on the educator side about letting teachers know, hey, on that Maslow's hierarchy, I know we assume food and shelter. I know we assume belonging, but you really have a huge part in that esteem section of Maslow's. And I always share that story of the coach, just like the good morning and the high fives. That's surface. If you really want to build esteem, I tell that story to let them know this is what it takes, man. It's 180 days passed on to the next year, 180 days passed on to the next year, 180 days. Your August routine of welcoming students into the classroom is not enough to make them feel safe and have esteem and self-efficacy to perform at the highest levels for you. It's a grind. And if you don't have what it takes, it will run you out. It will run you out of the profession.
Man, there were so many great nuggets from what you were just sharing there. I love the idea where you talked about being careful with pity, right? We're not here to pity students. We're here, like you said, to let me help you, let me coach you through, let me give you a way to redeem yourself. So oftentimes, and this has been my experience as well, students are very quick to become combative and defiant because they don't see a way out. I mean, we hear it all the time. What happens to an animal, right? If it's caged, if it's locked in the corner, well, I'm going to fight my way back out. But if I can give you an out, if I can show you how do you redeem yourself, I'm not just letting you off the hook, but how do you redeem yourself, right? Maybe I'm not going to be so defiant anymore. And so I love
Yeah.
that you surfaced these pieces. And I always, I begin to, as we move into the other part of this conversation, I always ask, what can teachers do, as we're talking about this? Because I'm sure people are listening to it and I'm like, I hear you, Mark, I hear you, but what can I do? Right? Am I starting my own prime group? Right? Like, what do I do? But one of the things to kick it off, and I want you to jump in then, is I heard you say, like, don't start something that you cannot finish. Right? Don't start your year off with all the high fives at the door. Don't start your year off with some kind of tradition. Don't start your and then halfway through the first quarter, you're like, man, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I don't feel like spending any
Hmm.
more time or money on that. Because that sets this precedent, right? Students are going to be like, oh, okay, right? That wasn't real. It's fake. And I would tell you, like, I remember years ago, I started doing these birthday things. I was at an elementary school. We started the day off all together with the morning announcements. And I started this weird little birthday thing where I was celebrating students' birthdays. And they would come up and they would get a bracelet. And I remember one of the kids like, I don't think this is going to last. It won't even be here when it's time for my birthday. Right. And for kind of, I was like, bet, let's see what happened. But I also heard the message behind the message,
Yep.
like nothing we do lasts. So I had to be very, very intentional. Right. I ran to the office. I bought like 30 more things of like wristbands just so we wouldn't run out. Like we got to be very, very intentional. So
Absolutely.
I'm curious, teachers listening right now, educators listening right now, if they were to say, Mark, how can I really begin taking this proactive stance on resilience, whether it's in my classroom, whether it's in my organization, my school, whatever it might be, if what recommendations would you have for them? A podcast, book, resource, action, whatever it might be that's on your mind right
Man, there honestly is so much. There's so much. And so I'm going to try to narrow these down into those three categories I talked about: trust, um, the predictability of the safe environment, and teacher, educator wellness. And so, first, on the relationship, I think we need to go again upstream and focus on humility.
now.
And I had a principal tell me that every time they hire somebody at their school, she makes her team write down all of her weaknesses and all of the school's weaknesses, and they look for applicants to meet that. And I remember like hearing that, I was just like, what? Like, how humble do you have to be to
Mm,
do that? We need to do that as educators. We really need to do that with educators. And there's this thing called the Johari's window, and it's a a little matrix, four square matrix, and I have it here. It says the first one is what do you know about yourself? So you write that. That's easy. Everybody thinks they know about themselves. It says what don't you know about yourself? And it ties with this. What do your students know about you? I think we need to focus on that. We need to give kids space to tell us the positive and the ugly about us. Okay. Then it says what your students don't know about you. So, kind of things you keep on reserve, you don't always share. And then, so it's kind of trying to tackle those blind spots like that assistant, like that principal did, to say, hey, I want to be very intentional in these areas. I've even done it with my kids where I'm like, hey, where am I failing as a father? Now, granted, you don't always have a global perspective, but there's still a lot I can learn about what you say. And
mm,
so responding to that, knowing that my goal is to build resiliency and relationships, me being aware of my blind spot, if that's going to sever our relationship or if that's going to strain it, then I will at least be humble enough to listen, because the relationship is more important than my preference and it's more important than my ego. So that's the first thing. Along with that, there's the Harvard implicit association test. There's multiple tests on there that you can take. Again, it just lets you know that you might have unaware implicit bias that you bring into the classroom. It's not to beat you up, but once you take it, you can at least be aware that, hey, and by the way, we all have it. We
right, right,
every
right.
single human on this earth has it. If I go downtown Nashville, where I'm at, and somebody walks behind my wife and I where I'm walking, I'm gonna look a couple times. It's partly out of protection. It's partly out of not knowing. that person could be a saint, but that's just my bias to that situation. So we all have it, but it at least lets us know uh, where those biases may be, and then we can be humble enough to kind of attack those and see if we bring them into the classroom. When it comes to predictability and structure, I would go with the 5 minute journal. I think that's one thing you could put in rotation. And look, you can type it out. You can type it out on notebook paper, those questions. You don't have to buy a journal for every kid, but it sets up that thinking over and over and over again. And what you're really trying to do is set up the structure of the day and of the lesson, of positive thinking, also predictability about what's going to happen next. A lot of them need to know certainty. It's kind of tied to the abandonment, that certainty of this is what's happening and this is where you're staying. Um, and to tie that with relationship building, I've said this to students so many times. The students that push back on me the most, okay, I'll bring them into the hallway and I'll say, "Who loves you? Name somebody." And I'm hoping they have somebody. I don't care if it's Big Mama. I don't care if it's my mom. I'll say, "Who loves you?" And they'll say, and I was like, "Do I love you in a way that looks similar to them?" That can kind of go either way. But what I'm trying to let them see is that I don't like you holding me accountable, but you are love. I'm trying to see if they can at least buy into that. And then usually it's yes, like, have I been patient? Have I warned you? Have I tried to keep you out of the office? I use that a lot. Like, I've tried to not send you there because this is an in-house thing. You and I are going to work this out. And so when they start thinking through it, then I'll say, so why are you fighting me? Why are you trying to lose one extra person who loves you? Because sometimes it's just one or two people. So, but I'm trying to be consistent in my behavior. I'm trying to be consistent in the day. And a lot of times that means we have to plan in a way that doesn't leave any downtime or unpredictability or chaos. I know educators won't like that one. A lot of educators don't like that. Let's see, there's another book, The Art of Taking Risk. Just quickly, this is just going back to adversity that um, the so there's harmful ways to like get high, right? But it talks about, and also in upstream, it talks about that there are natural highs in life, and those are when we take emotional and cognitive risk, which means we need adversity. We need adversity. You take emotional and cognitive risk. That's the performance. That's the theater. That's the touchdown. That dopamine rush is just as addicting as the harmful ways to be intoxicated. And so part of that thinking and that consistency of the journal, part of changing their behavior, celebrating those small accolades, is just dopamine, 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 until you become addicted with that feeling. And that starts to influence you more than what you go home to. So that's extremely important. I'm going to add this guy as a resource. Brian Bunny at Laverne Middle School. He's a counselor out there. He's taught me. I was just watching him at a conference at NYAR. He was talking about cognitive behavior theory, and he used this simple truck. He said, "I draw it on a notepad. I draw a truck. On the front two wheels, I put behavior and thoughts, and on the back wheel, I put feelings. And I always say, change the first two, and the last one will follow." He is a guru. So email him. Look, he's taught me so much that I've been able to apply to my Prime Academy boys. And he just simplifies it. He just makes it so palatable how he takes those abstract ideas and helps. And then lastly, self-care. If you want to read Willie Spears' Win at Home, he pretty much talks about um, your obituary is not going to be about the hours you put in at school. You have to protect yourself. I always tell teachers at the end of my sessions, you are the most valuable asset to a child. So you have to protect yourself. And empty cups can't pour into other cups. And so everyone knows exercise is good for you. Everyone knows those things, social groups, a support system. We know them. I'm not going to beat anybody over the head about it, but it's being intentional about prioritizing those and making sure you actively participate in those, because again, this is gritty work. It's not for the weak at heart. It's gritty work, but it's worth it, and it's impactful. And so it's worth it.
No, I appreciate you bringing those resources. I've done that bias one, right? And the bias one, I'll be honest. I was a little embarrassed. I was like, oh, because you're right. Like we all have those biases that we carry with us. But I remember doing it. And I was like, oh, that's okay. Well, we'll have a conversation about that a little bit later. So I'm curious as we close things out. I'm sure you just mentioned sessions. At the beginning of this, I teased out that you and I are going to be spending some time at NCMLE in about a week and a half from now, about 2 weeks away. Uh, and so I'm sure that people are going to want to be able to connect. Beyond the podcast, they want to jump into a session of yours. They want to learn, share space on social media, whatever it might be. So how can people find Mark Gibson?
Yeah, you can email me at mr.markgibsonjr@gmail.com. My co-presenter, Shavonta Arline, presents with me. We do the main session we present it nationally is called Aces to Kings and Queens, and it goes a lot on what we're talking about now, how to take kids where they're at, move them to resiliency, like my mama said, stand on your own 2 feet. And the process it takes to get there, which is a lot of what we're talking about. We are welcome to come to schools. We're welcome to do consultant work. But that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of what we do. And but yeah, you can reach me at email. You can reach me on Twitter, Mark Gibson Jr. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Mark Gibson Jr. If you want to donate to the Prime Academy, I would love, love, love for you to reach out and learn more about what we do. Those group of boys, man, they are awesome. We focus on professionalism, on how to tie a tie, how to iron clothes, how to, tomorrow we're cooking a healthy meal and dessert. We do so many activities in the community. We serve our staff, we serve our community. There's so many things that we're working on of just trying to give them another level of excellence to see and experience. Again, all working on influencing that thinking and turn that into beliefs and getting their actions to follow. That's our mantra. We say no excuses, no limitations, onward. And so that's what we're doing. And I hope y'all can join us on moving onward and impacting these kids' lives. Please reach out. I would love to talk to you.
Well, I'll make sure that the QR code for that will pop up in just a few moments here. The link will be in the show notes. And I was wanting to say this as you were talking about Prime. I was going to say, because Mark, he ain't that hard to find. I mean, Dion, don't sue me. I don't know if he even listens to this, but if he does, like, I'll just be honored and be like, oh, that's awesome. I'm honored. I'll pay the fine.
Yeah.
But Mark, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on and having this conversation. So, obviously for being in this space, but more importantly, for all the work that you are doing to move the field of education, because the work that you do, the work, impacts all of us. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, thank you, man. I mean, before NCMLE, I saw you at Innovative School Summit in San Antonio, and what you were talking about made me follow you on Twitter, watching you over a year now, I think, almost a year, and just watching the things you do with your kids, how engaging, how involved you are. Not only that, but how you fight for advocacy and access for your students in the Chicago, Illinois area. I mean, it has, even down here in Tennessee, it has influenced me a lot to do things like prom, and to be called to again to balance the commitment and convenience. And just watching your dedication, man, just it's inspiring. I appreciate it. You keep it up. And I can't wait for us to meet officially in a week and a half.
Officially. Well, man, I am honored that that you joined me and that you are joining me back in this space. So I must have done something right. So that is a kudos. That is a great way for me to end my day. And so for all of you who are watching and or listening, as always, until next time.